dude threw a 50-50 jump ball to a 5'7" running back. What are we doing here?
It was a great throw.
To a 5'7" run.
The bye week's complete. You now have 12 straight weeks of Chiefs football incoming. Will the Chiefs make some moves before the trade deadline? Try to make this team better for that 12-game stretch? Let's find out.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Welcome into a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank. Member FDIC, our incredible partners in Possible here at KC Sports Network. Been a great day today. I am here with my friend Matthew Lane on a not victory Monday, on a bye week Monday. Maddie, how was your weekend?
Oh, weekend was pretty good. A lot of good college football, NFL football. Yeah, we Tucker and I talked about this already. You guys heard it. You're on the KCSN channel. You know my thoughts on the NFL Sunday. I'm a little under the weather today. I got a little man cold going on. So I'm one step away from death, as we all know with these man colds. And so, we're going to power through. Good thing it was the bye week. And, we still got a little bit of time here to get recuperated, but, it's been a tough Monday, buddy.
Is that why you were a little grumpy today?
Yeah, that, and I got a new dog, and she, every time I leave, she pees inside, and then even in her crate, she pees in it, so I have to give her 3 baths a day, and then she eats all the food. It's been a day, so, that's what's going on with me.
Yeah, the vibes in the group chat were just a little tad grumpy, a little tad ready to tussle.
Fuse was short earlier today. I mostly avoided reading Twitter. I sent some tweets out, but I mostly avoided reading Twitter so I don't get into a spat with somebody on a day like today. Because again, I'm one step away from death with this man cold, and then I had just dealing with the dog and all sorts. And a busy day. So we're trying to rebound. We got some fun topics today to talk about. Why the Chiefs are broken. Why no other team in the NFL trade with the Chiefs. Why the Chiefs won't draft anybody good in the first round. It's a good day, Kent.
Oh, this is, yeah, I think that we're gonna get a lot of fun here. No, that we have plenty of fun stuff to talk about. Look, this team is they're 5-0. They are the 1 seed in the AFC. There's only one other team that is undefeated. I think the Vikings were on a bye as well this week, if I remember correctly. So I think that they were weirdly on the bye the same time that the Chiefs were. And I'm watching teams eat each other alive right now. The Texans are doing pretty good right now. We'll get into that in a little bit, I'm sure. But this is obviously a time for the Chiefs to evaluate. Andy Reid's very good coming out of the bye week. He normally is assessing the situation, assessing the state of the roster, looking at his team, looking at what they can do to get better, and trying to figure out, what the version of this team will look like moving forward. And, we've talked a lot about trade partners. And I think one thing that's always, worth, assessing when you're looking at, the Chiefs trying to make a move for, we're presuming a wide receiver is there's got to be 2 teams to tango. And unfortunately, I think for the Chiefs, hey, the good news for the Chiefs with the bye week is, hey, look, you get some time to assess after you've suffered some early season injuries. You get to try to figure some things out, move on. The downside is some teams may not be out of this thing yet, right? Some teams might be willing to hold on to their players a little bit more. You need 2 teams to tango when it comes to a trade. The deadline is still a few more weeks away. And so that can kind of put a damper on a team's ability to maybe make a move soon if they wanted to. However, there's been a little bit of action there as of today with some teams that are starting to fall off a cliff a little bit. And it does feel like we're starting to see, Maddie, a pool of teams that could potentially be looking to move some of their players, accumulate assets for 2025 and beyond, because they ain't going anywhere, and they're in really bad shape in their respective divisions.
Yeah, I think we're getting deep enough into the year where you probably some teams know they're not going to be competitive at this point, right? Some teams already knew they weren't going to be competitive, but you have to put up this facade just in case things break right. Maybe you win a couple coin flip games and all of a sudden you're competing for your division, which is a playoff berth, which matters, and you can't start to sell things away then. So I think now we're deep enough into the year that a lot of teams know, okay, we're not going to be competitive and we no longer have to pretend that we can be competitive, that we are going to wait for those coin flip games. And so there's some teams there. I mean, some of these teams have been there. The Carolina Panthers, the Cleveland Browns, Tennessee Titans. These teams have probably already been in this spot, but like every week that goes by and they lose a game, they're just further and further away from even being able to make the claim that we can compete. So like, I don't think it's a surprise. Would you push back on any of those teams kind of being locked into this spot of, yeah, they're probably going to be sellers at some point or for the right price at some point in time here soon?
Yeah, I think some of the teams you just talked about for sure. Like, the Cleveland Browns, I think this last week was a pretty big turning point for them because, I mean, like, hey, they're continuing to start Deshaun Watson and they're keeping business as usual there. They're rolling with their guy. But also, they still haven't played an in-division AFC North game yet. And so if they go 2-4 and they win that game, maybe they talk themselves into sticking around while they still have their whole divisional slate in front of them. But now they sit 3 games out. So like, I feel like the Browns seem like a team that's probably, on the outs. The Jacksonville Jaguars, I mean, they just decided to start selling today. Again, that is
and I think they're the team that I think entered, right? They're the team that probably entered now. I don't know if they were already here yet. Maybe the signs were on the wall. I'm like, it sounds like that locker room's a mess. It sounds like, once again, Doug Peterson and his quarterback hate each other. Like, they just can't stand each other's guts. And like, when that's the case, you're probably not going to win. But it sounds like still, even when they were 1-4 going into the week, they get, maybe you win both games overseas. You come back after the bye week after that, and you're probably kind of maybe clicking and you can make a push. And an AFC that does have a little bit of an open wildcard spot. It's like, I can understand them going into this week thinking they're still going to be competitive. But now, after that loss, they're already starting to sell off. Now, granted, again, it sounds like, they moved on from a player that was causing some issues in the locker room as well. So like, I can't speak entirely to that, but they might be a team that has now moved from we're trying to be competitive, so we don't want to sell, to now they might be all in. They might be willing to give up anything that's not like a long-term building block.
Well, and Shad Khan gave a vote of confidence to Trent Baalke, somehow to Doug Peterson, to the players before they lost this week to the Chicago Bears. So there was a vote of confidence. It would be a tough sell probably to start making wholesale changes. Although, yeah, they have moved on from a defensive tackle there with some, questions there. But that's the first domino to fall. That's the first in-season trade, I think, in earnest, heading into this, to this trade deadline. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars, Cleveland Browns are firmly there. I think the New England Patriots probably are, like, for what the Chiefs might
have nothing to sell.
I don't think they have anything to sell. And I also think that they're kind of a team that's, maybe trying to get their future set up a little bit better. So maybe it incentivizes them to hold on to some players. Maybe they're even looking to extend some of their players. Tennessee Titans, though, I think they've figured out pretty quickly Will Levis isn't the answer. And they continue to lose football games. They've already lost 3 games in conference. They've already lost 2 games in conference. They've already lost a game in the division. They've dropped a game in the division. So, I mean, I feel like the Titans could be another team that is already starting to look to sell potentially.
Oh yeah, they got to be there. They're another one. They're with like the Browns and the Panthers to me, that they were probably there going into this week, right? And then Will Levis has given you. Man, this is hard. Will Levis has given us some of the best moments this year of television that you could possibly ask for, but he's also done enough that, like, I think if this team believes in him behind the scenes, like off the field, they can maybe go one more year with kind of the core that they have. So maybe they don't want to sell anybody that's not on an expiring contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe that's where they are. So maybe a guy like DeAndre Hopkins could be available because he's not going to be there beyond this year. This year's clearly a wash, but they might not be trying to get rid of just anybody or everybody, because again, I think Levis might have given them just enough that they could give this a one more year to see if it works or not. We'll have to see what their plans are there, but I do think that they're going to be sellers at some point in time, or at least they are a team that would be willing to be part with guys.
their extremely paid wide receiver Calvin Ridley melting down a little bit yesterday. Maybe they just want to move on from DeAndre Hopkins so Ridley can start getting more targets since he signed a 4-year, $92 million deal there. I don't know. Maybe they're more apt to move on from a veteran receiver like that. On the NFC side, and I think that's that's the cemented list, I think, for me, if I'm looking at, the AFC. Like Miami, I think they're hoping Tua comes back. They've won 2 football games. And the Bengals, okay, they're bad football team, but don't think they're trading with the Chiefs. And honestly, beyond that, I don't think there's a ton of teams that the Chiefs would be able to move with. Don't think the Raiders are going to do that. But NFC side, I don't know. I think it's a little bit more competitive as we sit here right now, as far as teams that will or won't be willing to move on. And is the list of teams that actually could be looking to trade players just the Carolina Panthers right now?
I mean, they're a hard yes. The Giants should be, because I don't think they're going anywhere, right? But that division is, the Commanders are in first place, and I don't know how much faith anybody has in the Commanders to keep that pace all year with a rookie quarterback and Cliff Kingsbury, who has a history of choking in the back half of years. So the Giants might not be ready to throw in the towel yet. Come trade deadline time, though, they might be, right? Because they just don't have a lot working. Daniel Jones clearly isn't it. The more years that go by, the more able they will be to get away from him and maybe make another move. So I could see the Giants maybe moving on from a piece or two as the trade deadline gets closer. Maybe not yet, but as the trade deadline gets closer. But after them and the Panthers, I really don't know. Anybody else that does it would have to be a severe cost-saving move. But you look at the Rams with only 1 win, they're about to get healthy again coming out of their bye week, or at least healthier. And the hope is they're going to make a run at the wild card. So they're not going to be ready to give up yet. The Cardinals have been in just about every single game. They have a pretty good core. I don't think that they want to move on. It's really hard to pick any other teams that are ready to sell anything off at this point.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I don't know, man. Outside of that, I think that's the list. And things can change a little bit here or there, and maybe you see a couple more teams enter the mix. But for the most part, I don't know, we're only a couple weeks away from the bye week, or from the trade deadline, right? And so some things could get decided a little bit more, in the next couple weeks. But I feel like it's an AFC heavy sided kind of scenario here. You've got 3 weeks left in between weeks 9 and 10 for some moves to materialize. I think this is kind of what the market is starting to show a little bit. Let's talk about the Chiefs and their bye week. Chance, like we talked about, Andy Reid gets a chance to reflect a little bit, gets to look at this team, assess his situation. And if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, my question to you, Matt Lane, is what do you think this team should be prioritizing doing coming out of the bye week? I know we've spent some time over the last couple of weeks talking about things they need to improve on, but if there's a chance to reset here or look at some things differently, what do you think they should be doing?
Well, let's start with the defensive side. Nothing. Keep doing what you're doing. Right? Keep doing what you're doing on the defensive side of the ball. I think the defensive side of the ball has been very good. I was kind of talking with Tucker with this earlier. You guys heard it on the Chief show. We were talking about what does the defense do really well? What do you point to? It's they're just assignment sound role playing football players. Everybody does their job, right? That's what it is. And that's why it feels like it's been so hard to talk specifically about the defense and what they're doing well. You can say Chris Jones is great. Here's why. Trent McDuffie's great. Here's why. Here's a handful of guys that are playing well that you aren't talking about. But for the most part, it's assignment sound football. They're all doing their jobs. They've been with Steve Spagnuolo long enough, but the majority of these guys, the whole playbook is open. They could constantly rotate between all these different looks. It's really hard to say this is what they're doing that's super special, but it's also really good. So it's almost like a boringly very good defense. Keep doing what you're doing. If I want to poke some holes, the 4-man pass rush isn't great, but guess what? You do have help on the way eventually with Charles Omenihu. And I don't know if he's going to hit the ground running at what he was going into the playoffs last year for the Chiefs, but he's going to add a better pass rusher to that defensive end position than what they currently have. Maybe George Karlaftis starts picking it up as the year goes on and becomes a little bit better of a one-on-one rusher as he flashed in the playoffs last year. That's really it. That's your weakness, is just having another edge rusher or any edge rusher who could really win one-on-one while Wharton and Chris Jones are winning on the interior. But you have a guy coming up, coming back from the IR that should provide that. So I don't know defensively if there's really any changes that need to be made other than just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, no, like I think if you're a Chiefs fan, you're thrilled with what this team has put out there at this point. You like, you're liking what you're seeing. I think they've exceeded the expectations that you might have with the team that lost, that lost L'Jarius Sneed, who, by the way, L'Jarius Sneed not getting rave reviews in Tennessee. So the Chiefs, I'm not gonna say dodged a bullet because, like, I'd love for. I think Craig made the joke in the DMs. Craig's doing great, by the way. I think he made the joke that, like, maybe the Titans will just, like, cut him after next year and he'll come back and just be be a Chiefs cornerback again. But yeah, no, I think this team has exceeded his expectations on the defensive side of the ball. I think the continuity has proven to be really, really valuable, and that's kind of the outside looking in thing that like on paper it makes sense, right? Like this is a team with a lot of young, talented players that are in their third year. Spags has the Rolodex at his disposal a little bit earlier, which allows them to build on a more dynamic, coverage structure. Whereas, 2 years ago, they played a lot of base coverage and, just tried to, keep things afloat with their young guys. They don't have that problem anymore. So yeah, I think it's just, continuing to do what they do. One quick question for you on defense. Jalen Watson, would you try to upgrade from Jalen Watson? Like, let's just say the Chiefs can't find anything to do with a receiver, but they want to try to find a way to make an improvement on their football team, and they're excited about Charles Omenihu coming back. So they just say, hey, maybe there's a corner out there. Do you think that the Chiefs need to upgrade of Jalen Watson for the home stretch?
Well, I think that you should go watch the KCSN update, where Tucker and I talked about Jalen Watson being probably the biggest unsung hero of this Chiefs team so far, because, buddy, you dig into the stats, he's been the best corner on this team. He's been better than Trent McDuffie, and I don't think that's true, like, on the field, right? Obviously, but Jalen Watson's been great. He's forced 7 incompletions this year. Trent McDuffie's forced 1. They've given up the same number of catches. Like, Watson's been phenomenal. I know he had a rough preseason game, and, like, I think if we can remove that from our minds and just look at what Watson has done on the regular season, dude's been great. Like, I think the narrative around him would completely change if every year we don't go into training camp saying, this is really a competition between Watson Williams and Najee Johnson, even though Watson's won it for 3 years in a row. Mm-hmm. Like, if we just change some of the narrative, I don't think anyone's worried about that. So no, I think you're fine with Watson as being your corner too. I'm happy we got there. I thought that would be a little bit of a weakness coming into the year. It hasn't been. I am still worried about corner 3. I think that is an area that, like, maybe if somebody fell into your lap, you take it. But I don't know, with as good as McDuffie's been, as good as Watson's been, that you need to go out and make a move at the DB spot.
I think he's been the big surprise of the year. And, I think that's a great kind of, he did look rough in that. He looked rough in that preseason game. And I just remember talking through it going like, you're hoping that it's just knocking off rust because he had missed a lot of time in training camp. And turns out that's exactly what it was, and he's played a good brand of football. And I think that's something to be excited about. Because I think both those corners have played well. I think Trent McDuffie still played very good football this season as well. So the drop off hasn't been as severe from L'Jarius to Jalen as you might have thought. Now, I'm not saying there still wasn't a drop off from 2023 L'Jarius, but still, I think this team has handled itself very well at the cornerback position. That's a credit to Brett Veach. That's a credit to that coaching staff for trusting this group of players. But yeah, I don't know. I think they're in a good spot offensively. I think there's some stuff worth talking about there, though, Maddie.
Oh, buddy, I got a lot here. So I'll let you start. You tell me what needs to be changed in the offense, because I got a lot. I did do some bye-week deep diving into some stuff that I think is a problem with the Chiefs' offense, specifically the passing game. I think the running game has been fantastic. So I'll let you kick this one off, and then I'll come in to back clean up here.
I am scared of man cold Maddie. I think the biggest priority for me is just to continue to find ways to get Xavier Worthy involved. I think and continue to try to build that trust between Patrick Mahomes and Xavier Worthy. So we talked about this a lot, and we've been talking about it a lot in the DMs, just about Xavier Worthy, his involvement. And I think some of those missed opportunities in that game against the Saints, you saw them trying to feature him more. He got 6 targets, could have been 7, could have been 8. and it could have been of the vertical, deeper variety, right? And the deep over that Mahomes missed. There was another downfield shot that Mahomes probably could have uncorked and given his guy a chance. And I think there's so much meat left on the bone for this team from an explosive play perspective. And Mahomes hasn't always unfurled the ball, right? He hasn't always given a Xavier Worthy a chance, but there's been really good opportunities, I think, for him to get the ball down the field. I do really believe that is coming. I really do. I think it's this team has got too much of a sample size of figuring things out and doing the right things when it matters the most. That I just don't believe that Mahomes will not start working the ball down the field with these opportunities that Xavier Worthy gets. But outside looking in, still hasn't happened to the effect that you hoped. Is it a little bit of trust with the offensive line? I'm not sure. Is a little bit of lack of trust with Xavier Worthy? I'm not sure. Did he not see him? There's a lot of reasons it could be the case. But if this team can just start getting the ball down the field a little bit more, specifically to their most explosive pass player. By the way, 4 touchdowns for Xavier Worthy. Like, we can talk about a lot of different stuff, but like, he's put the ball in the end zone 4 times. They featured him in some key situations. They've utilized that speed and that ability. But I think he's shown too much to this point for me to not trust that he can be a real game changer, a real X factor for this offense. So I'd like to see them get involved more, especially down the field.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Like, if we're going to say like things that need to change specifically, it's getting Xavier Worthy more involved, and more so, you got to get him away from just running the vertical route tree. Like, it was nice to see some more of those like crossers, whether that's the mesh stuff that they've actually thrown or the deeper crosses, the deep overs that they haven't thrown yet. Like, getting him on stuff like that, but also like open up the route tree. Let's get some more comebacks. Let's let him make some outbreaking routes. Let's consider. Like, I'm not asking him to go run a dig from the slot and get decleated by a safety.
We're good. We were talking about this the other day. It's like,
but you can align him out wide and have him run a dig and catch the ball. I don't know, before you get to the safety, just open up the route tree a little bit for him. Let's let him do a little bit more like he did at Texas. And the other thing that needs to be fixed, the offensive line just needs to continue to gel with Mahomes, right? They need to get on the same page. I don't know if there's any changes you can make other than leaving Wanya Morrison there, because it has been a little bit better with him. Mahomes has to get better, like more situated, more comfortable with them. They have to do a better job of passing off stunts, specifically on the right side. Morris needs to continue to work on make sure he gets depth. Like, those things will make them feel more comfortable. But like, I'm with you. That's probably like the biggest thing to change directly.
GEHA is a proud and caring member of Chiefs Kingdom and wants to give fans an opportunity to be part of the coin toss for their favorite team. When the defending champs, the Kansas City Chiefs, the 2-time defending champs, the Kansas City Chiefs, take the field this season, make sure you're in the right, you're right in the action by entering to win a chance to be the GEHA coin toss captain. Go to chiefs.com/GEHA to enter. That's chiefs.com/GEHA to enter. Make sure you are taking advantage of that. Maddie, you got anything else on the offensive side of the ball?
Oh, buddy, do I? Oh, do I? All right. So first of all, like, man, I would love to be out there for the coin toss. Everybody could see how tall I am finally and quit thinking I'm 5'8". That'd be great. All right. Offensive side of the ball here. What do we got? I went back and I watched. I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with the Chiefs offense. Why does it look broken? Why is it not working? What's going on with this? What's the issue? And I had some theories. I talked about them a little bit, right? I think that the Chiefs, and Andy Reid specifically, run too much of the same stuff that they've been running for years. Too many flood concepts, too many things where they're trying to build, as you say, the triangle, and specifically trying to put that triangle into the boundary, like into the sideline. They're trying to not throw it over the middle of the field as much anymore, but run it towards the sideline. But I didn't have anything to back it up yet. I was just kind of basing it off what I saw, and I think modern defenses are getting better at covering it. Well, let's see. I had some time on the bye week. Let's go back and look. I went and watched every single Chiefs pass that was 3rd and 7+, 3rd and medium, so 3 to 6 yards, and every single second and long, like 2nd and 7+ pass play that wasn't play action. The Chiefs ran, of all those, 58 dropbacks, 36% of them I classified as a flood concept, which would mean 3 routes into the boundary, like trying to build those 3 different levels into the boundary. 36%. That's kind of high. That's kind of high for just the flood concept. Conversely, they only ran, if you also include high-low concepts, so it's the same concept. You're trying to throw high-low over the middle of the field instead of the sideline. You can combine the two. That's over half of their pass plays are some form of triangle building levels concept that's just attacking zone. You're essentially just altering space, and you're not really trying to ask anyone to win a one-on-one route. You're just trying to win the game of space. And then if you flip to the other side, I call them more of like ISO routes, but these also include 2-man routes. Sometimes they're going to be involved in things like that. But routes where you're really just asking someone to win straight up one-on-one, that also only accounted for 36% of the Chiefs routes. This is just a lot of numbers that don't mean anything. So I went and I also did the same thing for 2 games of CJ Stroud, of Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, of Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. And I have a couple more quarterbacks I want to get to. I'm not even going to make you guess. 23, where am I looking at? 9% is the average of the flood concepts run by these quarterbacks. Now, it's a smaller sample size. I couldn't watch them all, but only 9%. The Chiefs are essentially running 3 times as many of these like flood concepts as these other teams right now. And I really do think that's part of the issue they're having with the offense is they are just trying to do the same old thing that teams have been seeing for a half decade. The Chiefs have been beating the NFL for a half decade running these exact same things. I think they're still leaning into them a lot. And I think teams are just kind of figuring out. Go back and watch how many times the Chiefs try to run some version of snag, which is going to be a corner and out and something to the flat. Watch how many times they try to run it and nothing's open because teams have a defender covering all of them, or the flat defender is doing a great job in his cloud zone and he's just kind of taking away 2 routes because they understand the spacing of what the Chiefs are trying to do now. Like teams have done a great job at taking away what the Chiefs are trying to do, and they keep trying to do it. And I just think modern defense has gotten great at taking away these like sideline flood concepts, and the Chiefs have a lot of them. They get to them a lot of different ways, and sometimes they do work. Like I have my like success rates in here. They work enough. The Chiefs haven't been bad in these drop back passing situations. It's really ugly sometimes. It leads to a lot of scrambles, and it hasn't worked out great. And I really think they need to get away from doing this so often.
So if they're going to get away from it, what do you want them to incorporate more, Matthew?
Oh, buddy, this is where it gets tricky. I'm glad you asked. The Chiefs, on what I went through here, the Chiefs only threw, like I said, there's 58 dropbacks. They only threw 6 passes to like backside away from these concept isolated one-on-ones. Only 6. And actually, of those 6, 2 of them were actually to a running back, so that doesn't really count. Only 4. 4 passes went to a backside like isolated player. One of them was Xavier Worthy on a broken play versus the Ravens. We had the Travis Kelce go route. Like, there's not a lot. Like, there's some broken plays in here. There's some Justin Watson like backside digs that have come up, but they really don't have any involvement from the backside away from these concepts whatsoever. The reason for that is, well, they don't have anyone that wins one-on-one at all. Even when they had Rashee Rice, I think he gives you a guy that's capable of winning a one-on-one, but it's not on like the backside of a play or the front side. Like you can
it's from number 3. It's a slant route against the linebacker, like the Ravens.
It is right. You can scheme him up. You scheme him up a matchup he can win. But then also on these concepts, right? You say, hey, Rashee Rice, you're running a speed out on this play. We need you to get open. He can get open because he's explosive and a good receiver. You now make that Juju Smith-Schuster, who's really good at finding spots in zones. But if he has somebody dedicated to getting him, guess who's not getting any space? Juju Smith-Schuster. Now we put that on the backside, and whether it's Worthy ISO'd one-on-one on the back end where they play press, or they're just going to put 2 guys over him, or it's Justin Watson, or it's even Travis Kelce at this point in his career, there is no fear of that guy beating you. And the Chiefs don't make teams pay. Whereas if you go look at these other teams I've went through, and now Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Nico Collins. It's kind of unfair to compare him to those guys. That's why I said that's why I did do the Packers, so I could get like the Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs, how, they all tell me to pronounce it a different way. So I try to get some other teams that don't have stud receivers, but the issue is the Chiefs don't have somebody that they can say, hey, we need you to win on this play. This is what was startling to me. I looked like specifically at like the Texans, the Bengals, teams whose passing attacks are really good right now. It's a lot of these like ISO'd routes. It's a lot of stuff where it's just like, hey, we expect one of our guys to win. And it's usually the best player, but sometimes it's Josevas for the Bengals. Sometimes it's Tank Dell for the Texans, who's like good, but not a great player. Like other guys win these one-on-ones. The Chiefs just don't have those guys or don't really ask their players to do that. So what do they need to fix? Get a guy that can maybe beat man coverage once in a while. Like this kind of leads you back to the trade thing, but like they need someone who can beat this man coverage, especially without Rice, because even in their concepts right now, they don't have somebody that creates the separation if the space doesn't allow it, if they have to beat a man, not the space on the field.
Well, if you think about what the Chiefs did with Travis Kelce more in his, the peak of his career, and even as recently as like last year, they really like to play that condensed Y ISO look. And what is a Y ISO look? It isolates a tight end, your Y receiver, Travis Kelce, on the backside of the formation, but they do it from a condensed alignment. Why do they run it from a condensed alignment? Because it gives him a lot of space to work to the sideline. It gives him a lot of options in the middle of the field, and it allows him to be a lot more involved in the front side of the concept, or work into the concept to the three receiver side, your crossers, your meshes, your digs, your balls, your routes over the middle of the field. It's a great alignment to put Travis Kelce, and it gave him a lot of flexibility. And you saw Travis Kelce get utilized and allowed the chemistry between him and Mahomes to have space to work with, let him kind of freelance. That was a great spot for him to do some freelancing. He liked to run, corners and, corner stops and curls and, an option routes from that alignment. So if they don't really believe he can do that as much, or they're trying to limit him doing that as much, that is taking away some of that one-on-one ability he has. Also, allowed him to work very easily into those concepts as well. So you're right. They don't have that true Y ISO guy the same way that they did, although I do think that they might be playing a little possum with that at times, because I do think you probably are going to be seeing a little bit more Y ISO in January and February, like the Chiefs started using a little bit during the playoffs last year.
But see, even last year, though, and yes, I mean, I think you're correct. And you saw it, that Travis Kelce was the Chargers, where he gets him on like the fade route, which I'm sure was supposed to be something else. And they launched that one up and he got it. But if you just look at over the years, they've reduced the amount of Y ISO down to almost nothing. Like Travis Kelce, I think last year caught 2 or 3 passes from a Y ISO look. This year, we're already at 1. So we're a third of the way there, but it's not something that they can go back to that well a ton anymore in his age. And I think what you see now, I guess the good news is what you see now, teams are going to give that single coverage a lot more. And that's the next issue is teams are playing these half field coverages, but nobody's worried that backside safety over one receiver isn't really worried about helping against Justin Watson. Realistically, they're not that worried about helping against Xavier Worthy until you start making them worry about it more sometimes. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they aren't. So you got that safety now has to be accounted for when you do run something else. And I think that's what's also led to the Chiefs have gone significantly away from doing the high-low stuff over the middle of the field. They no longer hit you with levels over the middle of the field very frequently. If they go over the middle of the field, it's mesh. It's it's crossing routes where you're not trying to work it high to low. You're just waiting for guys to cross and see who gets lost, right? They're no longer have the confidence that they are going to be able to spread you out 1, 2, 3 over the middle and attack that space, because teams have just been able to load up on the backside safety or the backside hook defender all of a sudden entering, because they're not worried about your guy on the backside. So I really do think it doesn't have to be a stud wide receiver. I don't mean they need a Nico Collins to come out. Obviously, that would be good, but you need somebody who can occasionally, once or twice a game, get open from these one-on-one opportunities when you have all this extra space. Or if it's not going to be that, it's going to be a Rashee Rice type player. Whereas if I put you in this flood concept, if I'm asking you to run a corner, you're going to win the corner when it's man-to-man. You're going to be able to create space when the field isn't giving to you. When I say the field, Andy Reid wants to attack spaces on the field more so than he wants to attack defenders right now. That's the way his passing game is built. And I think that's the problem, is teams are squeezing out that space. They're making Chiefs receivers beat players, not space on the field. They don't have guys that do that very well right now. So you got to figure out how these guys you have are going to do it. Or I think you're just going to have to spread it out a lot more. I don't think you can run so much stuff into the sideline. You're going to have to use the middle of the field more frequently. You're going to have to run different concepts and things like that. Start throwing the ball with a little bit more timing, which goes back to Mahomes and trusting these guys. So it's a little bit of an uphill battle. We saw them work through it last year, and that's where Rashee Rice came on. So maybe Xavier Worthy comes on and can do a little bit more and provide you that at least a dynamic player on the backside, or a guy that can beat a defender when he's hidden as the number 3 or number 2 on a 3-by-1 spot, rather than just always getting washed out. But I just think the Chiefs need to move away from only attacking space specifically to the sideline as frequently as they do, and try to use the entire field a little bit better, because they no longer are just out leveraging defenses play after play like they used to.
The Chiefs might use all the field, but maybe you want to be on the 50-yard line. Calling all Chiefs fans, you could be on the 50-yard line on the field inside GEHA Field for the official coin toss at a Chiefs home game this season. Visit Chiefs.com/GEHA now. You can enter to win a chance to be on the field for the march to the three-peat. Plus, you can score other exclusive prizes. Enter for a chance to win at chiefs.com/GEHA Field. GEHA is a proud partner of the Kansas City Chiefs. Matthew, if you don't have anything left on the offense, I'm going to let you throw this to break.
Do I have more left on the office? No, I think we wrapped it up. So I guess we'll be right back after this to talk about what are we talking about? Oh, the biggest threats to the Chiefs coming at you guys next.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/KCSNLab. That's mintmobile.com/KCSNLab. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/KCSNLab. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Thanks, everyone, hanging out with us tonight on a Monday, off a bye week. No reaction to a Chiefs game, just watching the rest of the NFL. Did you watch just football all weekend, or like what was your setup this weekend? Were you busy?
I mean, I watched a lot of college football. Go Ducks, get that O out there.
Yeah, we know.
Watched a lot of college football. College football is great. NFL football this weekend was kind of buns. And there's only a couple 1-score games, and it was like the lowest leverage games. I mean, besides the Commanders Ravens, it was the 1-score games were bad teams. Right. So was it the most compelling week of NFL football? Maybe this Jets Bills game will get a little enticing once, it gets going in the second half or not. But yeah, no. Sunday in and out, Saturday locked in. Great Saturday. What about you?
Well, I didn't get to watch a ton of football as much as I would like. I got to watch a decent amount, I guess, on Saturday. Sunday, I was kind of a little bit hit or miss, but I took a nap on Sunday. That was nice. I hadn't done that in a long time, but I think sometimes during the football season, just with everything going on, I just start to crash a little bit. Definitely did that a little bit on Sunday, so that was nice. We did get to watch, I watched a little bit of football though. Got to see some of these teams that are potential contenders to the Kansas City Chiefs on both sides of the AFC and the NFC. So wanted to ask you, Maddie, who do you think the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs is on the AFC side?
The Baltimore Ravens are the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs. Because, besides the Chiefs, I think the Ravens are the only team right now that I feel confident in saying that they could win a game in any fashion. Now, do I trust Lamar Jackson to go win a shootout like he did against the Bengals a couple weeks ago, against the Chiefs, against maybe the Bills or something like that? I don't know. That's maybe where it gets a little dicey. Just ask them to win a passing shootout. But I think their offense has figured out how to use Derrick Henry better. I do think defensively, they'll eventually come around and be able to win some lower scoring games. It's just the thing that separates the Chiefs from the other teams right now is the Chiefs can win in any fashion. I know we haven't seen them have to really put up 40 points to win in the past 2 years, so it's a little bit of a question mark, but they still have Mahomes. The Chiefs can win any type of game. They don't need a specific game script. I think the Ravens are the next closest team to not needing a specific type of game script to win. So I do think that I still has as the next best team.
I think you're right. I think they're still probably. I think they're probably the biggest challenger for them. The Houston Texans, I do think, are putting together a nice little resume. They're winning a lot of football games, and it may not be always as consistent. It may not always be as pretty as it is with some, what it can be with the Baltimore Ravens. But I mean, they haven't fallen outside of that one loss to the Minnesota Vikings, who were magma hot that time when they played. Outside of that, though, they've taken care of business, and that's something that you can't say about everybody else in the AFC to this point. So, I do think the Houston Texans are starting to round into shape. They got a really good running game. They got all kinds of weapons in the passing game. I think C.J. Stroud's played good football. I think it's just a matter of if that defense and those young players, those young stars, can continue to ascend. And that's going to be, I think, one of the bigger questions is how this team kind of gels on the defensive side of the football, and if they're really able to kind of, come into their own, the Will Andersons, the Derek Stingley's of the world.
That's my one question with them still, right? Is like, I think we're early in year 2, and I think if you watch them, you've seen some instances where it looks like teams are kind of figuring out how to slow them down a little bit, right? Like you watch them, they really stink on early downs. They're getting into all these third and really longs, and they've been great at getting out of them. But they faced like their average up until I think the Bills game, or maybe it was right after, their average third down to go was over 10 yards. They were actively on average losing yards on first and second down. Like that's incredibly difficult to do. And they're getting out of it and winning. So like you give them credit for that. But I just think that there's some avenues to where teams can kind of put them in really bad spots. And how many times can you go into really bad spots versus good teams and continuously come out on top? This is more of a prove it thing. Not that they can't do it. I just need to see them prove that they can get over that hump. And then also, are they just not going to get big boyed come playoff time, right? This team gets penalized a lot. They make a lot of procedural penalties on both sides of the ball. Come also playoff time, can they just sack up and be physical enough to handle the teams like the Ravens, the Chiefs, even the Bills in times they can really they have decided that when they want to, when games matter, to push the other team around. Physicality's come back a long way in football, especially in the AFC right now. Like it's all about being physical come playoff time. Are they ready for that or not? We haven't seen it yet, right? So they're there. I have them just on the outside kind of looking in at the Ravens and the Chiefs right now because I do think they're a little bit more game script dependent than those two right now, but we'll see how it goes.
How do you feel about the Bills right now?
I feel like the Bills are the 2022 Kansas City Chiefs. 2023 Kansas City Chiefs. 2023, not 2022. 2023 Kansas City Chiefs. But here's the thing. They don't have Steve Spagnuolo and they don't have Patrick Mahomes, right? And not that Josh Allen, not that McDermott, like not that these guys are bad. Not that they're bad defensive coach. Not that they're a bad defensive play call. Not that they're a bad quarterback. They're both very good at it. But I don't know if I'm ready to trust them to be a lead at it at all times, in all the big moments, in all the right ways at the exact right times. So like for all the things that could have gone wrong for the Chiefs last year that just didn't once it became playoff time, once it became must-win time, what if one or two of those things go wrong? And like that's what I see the Bills at. It's like, oh, now you see a super flawed team that just doesn't catch all the breaks or play super clutch in all the right moments. And you're kind of like, they're not that good. Like I think that the Chiefs were on a very fine line last year, and they hit all the right sides of it because of the people that they have leading the way. The Bills, they just haven't got there yet, so I don't know.
I don't know if they have a blue chip on the defensive side of the ball that's really going to make a difference. Von Miller and I know he's out for suspension right now. He's looked better, but like I just don't know if this version of Von Miller is somebody that's going to help ascend that defensive side of the ball and really make an impact there. So like I think that's one of the things that gives me questions about them. I do think they play good team defense, though. I do think that they play pretty good team defense, but it's not as dynamic. And you're right, it's not as capable of what Steve Spagnuolo is bringing to the table. Josh Allen is definitely in a position where he's having to elevate a lot of skill players around him, and like I think he's played pretty good football over the course of the season. I know he's had a couple duds here or there, but I think he's got to keep working through it. And as long as he's a guy that can get hot, I think he's the second best quarterback in football. I know he went 9 of 70 against the Houston Texans or whatever it was, but I still am buying Josh Allen as the second best quarterback in football, and that's always gonna, I think, be something that will stick with me. Like the NFC side, like, are we buying the Vikes or not?
I'm buying them as a good team that can compete for the get to the Super Bowl. If the Vikings make the Super Bowl, I'm not afraid. I watch them. I understand the Flores thing, and I think Flores is like the perfect litmus test of like, hey, if you play a bad quarterback, he's going to beat your brain senseless. And if you play a good quarterback, he's just not going to get got enough that the talent deficit on that side of the ball is going to be a problem. Sam Darnold is still going to Sam Darnold. He's even been Sam Darnolding while they're winning, right? Like he's been having some really bad plays mixed in with his really good plays. So it's just, they don't scare me if they get all the way there, but I can see the path for them to get there. I don't think that they are, I don't even know if I think they're the best team in the NFC North there, right? And the record says it. I just don't even know if they're there.
I agree. I think the Detroit Lions are the best team in their own division, and I think they are an absolute wagon. Without Aiden Hutchinson, I think that's the big question, though. They lost their blue chip player. They lost their Chris Jones. They lost the guy that really helps kind of change the math for them up front, the guy that kind of, that defense runs through. But they've improved everything around Aiden Hutchinson on the defensive side of the ball still too. And like their secondary has been markedly improved. Their young defensive backs have played good football to this point. Terry and Arnold's been a nice addition. Brian Branch has looked outstanding so far this season. So they've, the young pieces in the secondary have gelled. That's one of the saving graces, I think, for them on the defensive side of the ball is their secondary. I do think largely with the NFC, though, I think the true contenders in the NFC, the quarterbacks just don't scare you. There's really not a ton of quarterbacks on the NFC side that are going to, strike a ton of fear in you as far as, true contenders for the NFC side. I mean,
let's be clear. Nobody in the NFC East matters, and nobody in the NFC South matters. Like, I don't want to be like negative talking about teams. Like they're competing to win their division. They're competing to go to the playoffs, and maybe they make some noise and win a game or two. But like, can you see any team from those divisions rattling off the 3 to 4 wins you need to win a Super Bowl? No. So you're limiting it to just the NFC North and then the NFC West. And do the 49ers scare you at all in terms of beating you in the Super Bowl at this point? Like, are you scared of the 49ers at all of beating the Chiefs in the Super Bowl after what we have seen from the past 6 years?
Yes, because that's the same team that's also got up 10 on them every single year. So sure. Like they've always put, the Chiefs in a significant bind, and then the Chiefs have to come back and win those games. So, and here's the thing, I'll just say this. And this is like more of like a take that, and maybe I gave it this summer, but it's a take I've been holding on to. I think if you get Niners Chiefs again, I think Kyle Shanahan is going to do uncharacteristic things throughout the entirety of the game. And so what do I mean by that? I think there will be more fourth downs that he goes to. I think, he will be more aggressive. He will do what he can to keep Patrick Mahomes from, wrecking his life and putting him in a state of misery for 9 months. I do think that there will be some uncharacteristic adjustments to how Kyle Shanahan manages those games. I think he'll be even more aggressive than he normally is, just to, to go fall on his sword, go down on his sword a little bit. So like, I do think he'll just, I think they'll manage it like they got 4 downs for almost the entirety of the game.
I just don't know if the psyche of Kyle Shanahan or that team can take it. I don't know if they can take another Super Bowl prep for the Chiefs and go into that game. And the moment things even start to swing the Chiefs' way, I don't know how you fight through it if you're and them in their shoes. Yes, on paper, they are still a good team, even without Christian McCaffrey, although I think they're putting a lot on Brock Purdy's plate, and he's played very good so far.
He has. He really has. He deserves a lot of credit.
He does.
He's been. I'm sorry. I've been a Brock kind of like negative guy, and I'm telling you, like some of the stuff he's done, and some of the stuff he's done from the pocket. It's not just the schemed open stuff. He's working full progressions and finding answers. I give him a lot of credit.
But who put him in a blender? Flores. What does Flores do? Throw a lot of stuff at you and make you figure it out, not from Kyle's brain, from your own. And what will Steve Spagnuolo do if that's the kind of football you're playing, right? So
that's fair.
I get it, but like I'm also okay. That's like realistically, I look at the NFC North and like whether it is the Packers who have kind of given Spags and the Chiefs a little bit of an issue, whether it's the Lions figuring it out without Hutchinson, or even the Vikings, who again, I don't know if I'm scared of they make the Super Bowl, but like that's where I see the biggest threat is coming out of the teams from the North there.
We can talk more about the San Francisco 49ers on Wednesday when Wednesdays are Matter Days on the KC Laboratory. We'll have Matt Hamilton on with us. But Matthew, I am absolutely thrilled to let you lead the remainder of this show. And I know that you wanted to talk about the NFL draft, and you've already started doing a lot of work on the NFL draft. The KC is a draft guide. The first, we'll see. Hey, maybe we'll go. Maybe we'll gift you. Maybe we'll go over an hour today. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's maybe we'll shock Craig while he's listening.
And showing some leniency.
You've earned it because you've already put grades in the KCSN draft guide master sheet.
I have.
Oh my. There's 19 grades already.
There's a few more that need to work their way in there. I need to cross some T's and dot some I's.
What do you want to talk about with the 2025 NFL draft, Matty?
Oh boy.
Do you want to get philosophical, or do you want to just talk about players specifically?
The first thing I want to do is read some super chats that we got. So we're starting with Bumpa here. I think Juju being wide receiver 1 will catch up. And see. Yeah, if Juju Smith-Schuster is the Chiefs wide receiver 1, that will, I think, eventually come back and bite them. I don't know if the Chiefs see him as their wide receiver one, though. I think they still think it's Xavier Worthy over Juju Smith-Schuster, even if the targets don't say that. But I think you got to look at how they're used. But either way, I still do think, that probably comes back to bite them at some point in time if you don't get a big jump from Worthy. I mean, would you agree if he doesn't have like a Rice-like second half of the season, they got to have somebody else come in and be better?
Yeah, you've got a few more weeks to figure this out and feature him a little bit more, then you got to go from there.
All right. Then we had another one here from Reggie. According to Matt Verderame, if the Chiefs were to trade for Hill, it would only cost us $2 million against the cap this year and $10 million next year. Listen, if the Dolphins want to send Tyreek Hill back to Kansas City for some, not a lot, because I do think you still got to pay him after that, right? I'm not super familiar with this contract.
I don't think the contractual situation will necessitate a new deal. I don't believe. I think he just got a new deal. So,
but like, what do you get to get him for those prices? I feel like that means the Dolphins are just wasting a lot of money, and so like I feel like you'd have to give them like some pretty significant.
You would have to. I think it'd probably take the first. I think it'd probably take the first round pick, and then
at least one, right? Like you're paying him. You'd only be paying him. I mean, like $11 million or something, like $12 million for 2 years of Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, they just restructured his contract, and that's why.
Yeah, they paid him a lot of money.
They gave him a lot of guaranteed, and I think how it's kind of finagled, the cost on the Chiefs would not be significant. So you got it. But
seems unlikely.
First round pick. I mean, it's a first round pick, and maybe the Chiefs gave up roughly the value, or the Chiefs acquired roughly the value of the 10th pick in the draft. Is that right? Well, I think when they traded Tyreek away,
I thought it was a little lower, but yeah, maybe.
And then so he's looking at Tyreek Hill's on the wrong side of 30 now at this point.
But dirt cheap for a year and a half.
I think a lot of teams would be willing to give up a first round pick if he became available. So like I think you're having to figure something else out. Yeah,
for sure. Okay. Well, yeah, because I'm like, I want to put him in Buffalo. Like if Buffalo hears the Chiefs are considering that, like you don't think Buffalo, because they can afford that, you don't think they're going to try to pony up whatever they can to get. I mean, they would never trade to Buffalo, I guess, actually. So maybe the Chiefs got that going for him. Idiot. Draft talk. Don't care anymore. Situation. Okay, buddy. They have too many people as is. Start philosophical. Bad draft. Not a good draft. And like pet peeve of mine, saying a draft is deep, but weak at the top. How does that work? How is the draft deep? How are you going to have a deep amount of fourth rounders where they're going to have to be drafted in the third round because the top is weak, right? That's no longer deep anymore. Like just because there's like, you might have 300 guys that you think are being worth of being drafted versus the 250. But like, if they're all having to go earlier than what they would have, that doesn't make it any better. It's just like the top of this draft is pretty weak. And I think that trickle down effect is real. This is me saying, hey, those third round picks, you probably don't need both of them. Maybe one of them can go get you a receiver that helps now, because I don't think this is the draft where stockpiling mid-round picks is going to be the move for you. Like, I don't know what you've seen so far, but like, this just doesn't seem to be the draft where you are going to be getting great value in the mid-rounds. It's going to be about finding the guys that fit for your team that can be like specific hits for you, which is great when you find them. But I don't know if you want to be holding on to those picks this particular year, just looking at this class from the 20,000 foot view.
No, I agree. I don't think it's a super great draft class. I think it does fall off as far as like pick value range. Like, I don't know, somewhere in the 70s is when I start. Like when I do a lot of mock drafts. It's actually a way for me to, sometimes look at players that I haven't looked at yet. And so it's kind of like, that's actually like running through exercises like that. And like some of these simulators, like the algorithms are going to be way off and all that kind of stuff. But it's been how I familiarize myself with a lot of these different players. And like, yeah, I think, I get very whelmed by pick 95 when I'm doing these exercises. So like, I do think that you're right. This could be a year where maybe you're using pick 95 to try to move up, from pick 32 or 96, up from, 96 to, packaging that in 32 to try to move up. So you're securing maybe a player that you're a little bit more excited about. So I do think, the overall depth of this class isn't super great from a high level view.
All right. So, I mean, like, I guess where you go from there is what you're looking at the positions that you think the Chiefs are going to be highly intrigued in, and like trying to compare that to where the perceived like value is in this draft. And it seems like it's a pretty solid corner class. So, and the Chiefs should be interested in cornerbacks. I think Jalen Watson playing well makes it less of a you have to do it early and more so it's just on the table. So, like, I think that's pretty good for them. I think there's going to be a lot of interior offensive linemen. The tackle class, I don't think is great, but the couple of these tackles that are in the top 5 to 10 are probably going to move to guard, and that's going to make the interior offensive line class look pretty good. So if the Chiefs do have to move on from Trey Smith or Joe Tooney, and you want to get a guy with, that's got a high pedigree getting in there, there's maybe some talent there. So like it's an interior defensive line, kind of the same concept. So there seems to be like the position groups that are relatively well, stacked seem to align pretty well with the Chiefs' positions of need. I do think looking from this far out.
What's going to be, and I think this is obviously more of a talk for February, March, and I think free agency is going to have to settle some of that a little bit. But, it does feel like the Chiefs want to be a year ahead with some of their draft picks, right? They like to have things ready for their transition. So, with, edge, with defensive tackle coming down the pike soon, with all the cornerbacks that the Chiefs drafted in 2022 being due for contracts after this year. You've got potential holes that you need immediate filling for at interior offensive line and linebacker. You always need a wide receiver. Like there's sneaky a lot of positions that the Chiefs could go directionally, and I would understand. So I think what's going to be interesting is like, do you prioritize cornerback because you might be losing all of them? Do you, or you're going to need, cornerback 2 and 3 now? Do you take an interior offensive line to plug an immediate hole because you've moved on from Joe Tooney or you're losing Trey Smith or something like that? I'm fascinated to see what, where the Chiefs, plan sits, because like there's going to be immediate need, I think, but there's also like this team wants to be a long-term drafting team and be a year ahead of some of their biggest issues, and they're going to have some big issues, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to do both.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of team building like stuff that's going to come up for this team and try to figure out how they're going to want to do it. And so like, just, try to stick without going too far into the team building stuff, because that's where you got to get free agency and it gets a little bit more complicated. Just looking at the draft, this feels like a year where the Chiefs are going to maybe look at position groups that are like a little bit considered less valuable. We talked about interior offensive line. The tight end class has actually got some guys in it. The linebacker class isn't stacked because it never is, but there's some guys that are intriguing. The running back class, right? So like this feels like it's the kind of year where maybe some of those lesser valued positions kind of shine for the Chiefs. And so I just, anybody at those positions that has caught your eye earlier in the college football season.
Yeah, Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State's been somebody of interest.
Jesus.
Yeah, he looks really good. Like if the Chiefs took him at like 64, I'm not going to be surprised. Like I know you're making some jokes about him in like round 3, but like I think even in this class, he probably goes a little bit earlier. I think this is the year the Chiefs should take running back. I think.
Oh yeah.
And I know it sounds weird to be saying all that while they are, looking to potentially have to fill some issues short term and long term, but like imagining Ashton Genty's not going to happen. But Quinshawn Judkins, maybe a Travion Henderson. One of those guys, Nick Singleton in day 2 of the draft. That's like somebody that has some juice that can actually kind of change, take those successful run blocks that this team has had this year and turn them into more than what the current running back core has been able to do. Again, and it's not a knock on Isaiah Pacheco. It's not a knock on Kareem Hunt. Those guys just have more juice than them. So like the idea of doing that with one of those guys would be terrifying, especially as teams are trying to do this and, invite light boxes to, keep Mahomes from making an impact on the game.
Right. That's a big thing for me. Like if this team is really gonna win the way that they have been this year, where they are relying on the run game a little bit more, you are going to be running into these lighter boxes. Like you got to make teams pay more than 8 yards at a time for your explosive plays, right? Like this offense looks significantly better if some of these 8-yard plays become 18-yard plays. They become 28-yard, 38-yard, like they become explosive runs. This offense functions a whole lot better because you start moving those margins for error. So if this is the way that you want to win, and that's fine, I don't know if the Chiefs do, but if this is what you want to do, then you probably should go invest in somebody that can provide that. I understand Isaiah Pacheco is a fantastic player to root for. He's one of the most fun running backs to play because of the energy and the physicality and everything that he brings. he's never been like a super explosive nor consistent runner for like the Chiefs, right? It's just not what he's been. And Kareem Hunt clearly's lost a step, and I don't even think that you want him back. So yeah, you start poking around, and like even if you miss out on one of those top guys, you look at a guy like Jaden Ott out of California, you get him on day 3 to provide that dynamic player. Devin Neal out of Kansas, I know roughly half of the fan base would love that pick. RJ Harvey out of UCF. Like there's some other running backs out there that maybe they aren't pure like 100% RB1s, but are like 1A, 1B types that would pair pretty well, or could just be the RB1s and just give you a little bit more dynamic place. Like, yeah, I think that a running back is definitely something that you should consider before like the last couple rounds. Get somebody that can come in and take a good bit of these carries and be a little bit more of a weapon and not just like a reliable, useful player like the Chiefs have kind of had so far of these guys. And same thing goes with the offensive line. There's some guys out there. If you're going to lose Trey Smith specifically, because Joe Tooney's up there in age, right? Like if you were going to lose Trey Smith to free agency and know you're going to have to replace Joe Tooney in the future, maybe you go invest in offensive guard. Maybe you get somebody to go in there and shore that up. So like you're looking at some tackles that might move inside. Emory Jones out of LSU. He plays right tackle for them. A lot of people kind of have him pegged to go inside to guard. Look at a guy like him. Did you have a couple other guys? Cameron Williams is a big tackle for Texas, but like I've heard some people talk about him moving inside. Anthony Belton, like there's tackles that can go ahead. There's tackles that can move inside.
Jonah Savayanea. I think I got it right. From Arizona. I've been very impressed with him. I'd love to see him kick into the interior. I think he'd be a great fit in Kansas City.
Yeah. The other route is, hey, maybe you find a tackle that you love, just happens to be sitting there because it's not a great class, and you want to consider moving a Kingsley or a Wanye inside. That's a possibility too. So if you're sitting there and I don't know, Josh Simmons of Ohio State comes out and teams are a little afraid because he just tore his ACL against Oregon, but he's available to you at the end of round 1, and you feel comfortable either redshirting him or rehabbing him before the year starts and like not forcing him to start, and you can snag him and move somebody else to the inside to play guard. Sure. Have that. Like I think there might be some options on the offensive line as long as you're willing to take, some of these high draft picks. And that means Kingsley or Wanya Morris and move them inside, or this new guy. So like, just don't shy away from less valuable positions. I think this year is a big thing that I'm leaning towards.
I think Kingsley and Wanye do factor in somehow and how this team, like both, I could see very easily both of them playing next year somehow. Like I do think like that's a thing this team might try to do in 2025 as they're trying to navigate and build this roster. They've invested top 100 picks in those guys. So like that could play into how they factor things with this draft and, who they take. Defensively, here's the thing. I think a lot of those moves that you just talked about are like more immediate needs for the Kansas City Chiefs in 2025. Like that might be how they try to handle this. But on the defensive side of the ball, who are some players that you think the Chiefs might be interested in, or some positions you think the Chiefs might be interested in?
I think it's a pretty good year. Interior defensive line are hard because guys that are physically capable of like mattering at the NFL level usually come out pretty early, or you just don't get enough. And like same thing for reason for offensive tackles. There's certain body types and athletic thresholds that kind of make it at the NFL level when you talk about these guys that are this big that have to move that much. So defensive linemen, specifically defensive tackles, they're a little different than edges where it's a lot of different body types. So defensive tackles, offensive tackles, it's the same thing. So only certain body types with athletic thresholds kind of like really, really matter. This is a year though where it's just might be kind of stacked in D tackle. So like there's a lot of guys out there, Mason Graham's going to be in the top 10, but like his teammate there coming Kenneth Grant, you got guys like Walter Nolan who's transferred to Ole Miss. Like there's guys out there. Someone who's really caught my eye though these last couple weeks. He transferred from Michigan State to Oregon. Derek Harmon at Oregon right now. He's been really good these past few weeks, and he's got like he stands out because he's a D tackle, but he's 6'5", over 300 pounds, and he's lost some weight this year at Oregon. They kind of got him moving quicker. You saw it against Ohio State when they went up against a good player, but like a good team. Here's this dude. He moves a little different, and he's got these levers, like these arms that kind of, he doesn't remind me of Chris Jones. I'm not saying that, but like he's got these arms for that defensive tackle position that kind of stand out. You're like, oh, defensive tackles usually can't hit this kind of swim move. They can't hit this kind of club and a rip because they just don't have the length to do so to keep offensive linemen out of their chest. Like Harmon's a guy that I think is going to be climbing up some draft boards here pretty quick if he keeps playing this well all the way through Big Ten play.
And the Chiefs might have to replace Turk Wharton next year. And they might have to replace Chris Jones a year, maybe even after that. Like, we'll see what that contract looks like. But, like, and hey, look, Chris Jones will be 32 by that time. So, like, the Chiefs, like, that's more of like I look at it as like it's an immediate help, but it's also, something that's checking the box for a long-term kind of move as well. So like I think you're right there. There's some interesting defensive tackles there. Anybody else on defense that you're interested in?
Yeah, get Travis Hunter. How about that? Wait, you said defense. I don't know if that's defense.
Good one.
No, okay. Corner is an interesting one for me because, like we've said, I think Watson's played pretty well this year. I think the McDuffie playing outside / like following number one wide receivers has gone pretty well. So if the Chiefs are interested in a corner, are you looking for another 6'2" outside corner that plays super physical and moving McDuffie back inside? Or are you looking for more of an undersized nickel that because like that's where I think the Chiefs have been the weakest this year. Chamari Connor's been good, but he's not a great cover player out of the slot, right? So are you looking for a corner that can step in and play coverage out of the slot? Or are you looking for another outside corner so McDuffie can step in? Is it an either or situation? Like, what do you want from that position? Because I think this quarterback class is pretty good. And there's guys at both types that exist. You just got to figure out what you're looking for, I think, going forward, because there is it gets a little tricky there.
No, I agree. And I think there is a long list of corners of interest. It's gotten a little bit smaller because two of the top 5-ish corners in this draft have gotten hurt. Benjamin Morrison's out for the year now.
Maybe all three.
Siobhan Revell out of Eastern Carolina also was torn his ACL earlier this season too. So like there's been some.
Is Will Johnson playing yet either? Like, has he?
Yeah.
Travis Hunter just got hurt too. Like, you might be looking at the top with Benjamin Morris, Will Johnson, Travis Hunter. That might be like, I don't know how long Will Johnson or Travis Hunter out. I'm not saying they're out all year. But like, you might be looking at like your top 3 or 4 corners all missing significant time this year for a draft class. I mean, those are really good corners too. Like, those are all guys that are like vying for top 10 to 5, 10, 20 picks for those 4 guys. And they're all kind of having big injuries in this final year. Notable.
Yep, there's a lot of injuries there at the cornerback position, but yeah, I mean, if you told me the Chiefs took a receiver, interior offensive lineman, even like a linebacker, I wouldn't even be entirely stunned with a couple of them. Like if they took Danny Stutzman at pick 32, I'm not going to be stunned. Like there's just I think there's a lot of positions that if the Chiefs took them early, you'd be like, yeah, it makes sense. Because there's some short-term and some long-term effects that this team is going to have to navigate with this draft. You wish it was a little deeper because they got 4 top 100 picks, but they'll make the most out of it still.
Final question for you, real quick. One player that you just want right now, you say this is the one guy that I want the Chiefs to get. You're going to have to bang the table for one player anywhere in the draft right now.
So already brought him up. Okay. Well, there's 2. I'll go. I like Tyler Ward a lot. He'd be a fun tight end to add to this room. So Tyler Ward would be fun.
I think he is a better prospect. I like Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green better. Just like he's more fun. I'm not saying he's a better prospect. I want to be very clear. I think Tyler Warren is a better prospect, but he's more fun. He's more of a my guy right now. That's not who I'm going with though. My one guy. Because I'm kind of factoring in draft capital here a little bit. Like I'm not going to like slam a number, a round 1 pick and say that's the guy.
Yeah, no.
Ricky White, wide receiver, UNLV. Been riding this Ricky White train for a while. They got him a quarterback that can throw now, and he's unguardable in the level of competition they do play. But you look when they play good teams, going back, to last year even, Ricky White always making plays out there. Transferred in from Michigan State to UNLV, so it's not like he's not a Power 5 caliber like recruit or athlete. You watch him, and just the way the body moves just said that's a guy that's going to play at the NFL level. And I think I'm specifically looking at the Chiefs' needs. 6'1", 190 pounds. We're not like a big guy, but we're not small either. I think we talked about at the beginning of the show, give me a guy that can beat some one-on-one coverage on the backside of some stuff. He's the kind of guy that fits that mold. And he's not like a jump ball 50-50 receiver. He's a guy that can create separation, win to all 3 levels. I think Ricky White's going to find a place in the NFL. And if you can snag that guy in your rounds 3 or 4 versus having to go round 1 for a wide receiver, I think he'll be pretty happy.
All right. So Jonas Savaianea is also another one of those guys from Arizona. I just got done talking about. He's playing tackle for Arizona. I like him a lot. I'd love to see him kick inside. I think I think Andy Heck would love to work with him, especially if they're moving to the interior. But I will throw one more out. Lander Barton, the linebacker out of Utah. Really good coverage player, has some coverage chops, some athleticism. If you're looking at like how this team builds their linebacking group right now, like he has the kind of skill set that I think this team needs from a coverage perspective, but he's not a complete slouch or anything like that against the run either. He's just an overall good linebacker. I don't know if I honestly don't know if he'll be there at pick 64 though. If the Chiefs wanted to take him, I'm not even sure he'll be there at pick 64.
Yeah, I need to dive in. Arizona's definitely hit some rough times lately, and I'm not saying he's playing bad. I just need to go in and look and see, like, has he taken a step forward from what he did last year? Like, when I watched him over the summer, has he kind of been the same? Like, just what's going on? Not that he's been bad, just that whole team as a whole hasn't been great down the stretch here. So I just got to make sure that he hasn't taken a step back now that other people got him. Like, here's one. This is unfair. This is what I didn't want to do. Guys, I'm quote unquote going to pound the table for Abdul Carter out of Penn State. Like, this isn't fair because he's going to go in the top 10. But this to me reminds me a lot. And it sucks because of the team. This reminds me of the Micah Parsons thing where a lot of people are going to watch him and they're going to nitpick the stuff about his IQ or him having inexperience in these positions and say, well, see, his pass rush plan isn't perfect because he's only done it for like 1 year, half the time. I'm like, guys, watch him move. Guys like don't move with that speed and that flexibility all the time. So he's one of those guys that people are going to overthink leading through the process, and he's going to go earlier than people expect. And I just don't be surprised when he goes top 5 if he does, because he's got that kind of special movement ability.
Any other draft takes that you want to get off before February?
No, this man cold's about to kill me. So I think we need to just go ahead and pocket the rest of these and for a later show.
Fine, that's going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening, watching, supporting. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.
Oh, I wish the Chiefs could take Evan Stewart, but he's tiny.
Siobhan Ravel,